I love history, but fiction really gives you the ability to go much deeper. So for me, historical fiction is the bringing together of real life with fictional characters in a way that the reader can sort of step into the story themselves. With my 4-book series, Till the Boys Come Home, I said about everything I had to say about war, at least for the time. And so I wanted to stay in the period, and the Great Depression created a very different kind of strife for people. It just seemed to me that that's a natural setting to understand and see people at their best and at their worst. And to me, that creates a real sense of drama. We look back on it with understanding. We know how the Great Depression ended. We know that there was a war waiting, and so we're always like wanting to tell the people then, hey, this is in your future. The people at the time didn't know any of that. In fact, they thought they were on the cutting edge of technology.
Some of the most interesting things to me in Jerry Borrowman's books are the technology, are the vehicles, things like that that he portrays.
I have never really considered myself to be a car enthusiast, but I found the chapters that really related to the cars very interesting.
I have to say that the cars are almost a character in this book.
I didn't know anything about Dusenberg automobiles.
The Dusenberg, which is one of the featured, is a car that at the time sold for $20,000. Adjusted for inflation, that would be about $800,000 today.
This car brings the class to Boise, Idaho. It becomes the car of Boise and not Mary Wilkerson's car or just that family's.
I got the sense that the automobile had a much different place in society in those days than it does today.
So to bring that in and to help people see the contrast of the Great Depression, here's this elegant automobile that's just built to the finest engineering standards, and here's people who are struggling to get by.
I especially love when they're racing the train and Artie waves out to the side to the people riding the train as they're all just so confused at these people going as fast as this train.
One day I figured out that every person who reads a book reads a different book, because they bring in their own life experience to it, they bring in their own fears, their own ambitions, and they actually read a different book than I wrote.
Favorite character in One Last Chance would probably have to be Artie Call, just because I can kind of imagine placing myself in his place.
I almost never try to create a fictional character that's based on anyone out of real life, but I did have a friend growing up who I think looks like Artie Call. And so I could sort of picture this high-energy kid who has a really good heart. He's not able to express himself very well, so when he does something that gets him in trouble, he's not really able to explain his way out of it and doesn't want to explain his way out of it. So Artie Call is the person who everybody wants to help him, and they're somehow frustrated that they can't.
It kind of makes me think of my friends and things that we do, just roaming town and having fun, just like these kids try to do, even though there's work to be done and all of these things that they're trying to cope with in their own lives.
And yet as the story unfolds, you find that this person who at first appears to be quite shallow really is a very deep character.
And from someone coming from a background of having nothing, that had to steal for food, I just felt very warmed by the fact that he would give so much to a friend just out of the goodness of his heart.
I think what Jerry does magnificently is he's able to draw characters out that are meaningful to people of all ages, and that's why we enjoy reading his books as a family. He has an ability to make characters relatable to my children. They were invested in Artie. They cared about him.
You feel like you really identified with the particular characters, and you found yourself either really liking them or really disliking them.
One of the characters in One Last Chance is very intolerant. And it's interesting, as I've heard the readers talk about it, they just don't like him.
I did not like David Boone at all. He was my least favorite person, and I think because I really have a problem with people who are so hypocritical, and he indeed was the epitome of hypocrites.
Well, it's a little more complex than that, because something happened in his life that caused him to become rigid like that. And so what I hope is that by drawing some crosses between the people who did stay with Artie even when it was hard to do, as opposed to those who walked away from him, we just need to be a more tolerant place. We need less anger in the world. We need less judgment in the world. We need more compassion. We need people who are just nice to each other.
I think this book would be enjoyable for anyone to read.
I like it when our dad reads to us because we can have a good discussion as a family and we can kind of bond and laugh and be happy together.
As a writer, I can't imagine anything more gratifying than to think that families would read this and talk about it with each other.
You know, how long we read really kind of depends on when we get started, you know, and sometimes we're later night, and every night we can't read just because there's a lot of activities going on, but generally 30 minutes to an hour. The problem we had with this book, though, to be quite honest with you, is that nobody ever wanted to stop. You know, every time it was 9:30 and we needed to get the kids to bed because they had to go to school the next morning, it was, hey, Dad, just one more chapter, you know, please, just one more page. We just wanted to keep going.
And as a mom, I really enjoyed that we were able to have discussions about the important things in the book, about relationships and about what family means.
I think the most exciting part was when Artie and Ray were in the New York shop and Artie was about to steal the cufflinks and Ray actually caught him.
I think we were all just really hoping that he would put them back, that he would, you know, do the right thing because we wanted him to succeed. We wanted him to make it.
And I think it was when they were in the car and Ray was explaining to Artie that if he had stolen those cufflinks, he would have called the police on Artie. And I think it was Ray's just deep affection for Artie that showed that he really did care about him and he did not want him to go down that path of stealing and living a bad life again.
Even though there are hard times and there are struggles, those are the times that draw people together and show us either the best or the worst in people.
There was an interesting reference in the book at the very end that said, I believe it was 1934, that put the Great in the Great Depression. And certainly going through a market correction right now, market downturn, economic difficulty in the country, it was interesting to try to correspond what was happening then to how bad could it really get today.
There's uncertainty, there are worries, and I think that was something that was reflected in this book, and it was interesting to discuss that with our children, that people that care about us get us through no matter what's happening outside the family.
I'd like to read more books that Jerry has written because they're really exciting and they want you want to keep reading it.
I really like Jerry's books a lot.